We were just getting ready to work on number 5, the application problem, on page 15 of our 4-8 notes. So one of the things I was reminding you that maybe you remember from prior math classes, maybe not, I teach it in the class before this, is that when you're reading word problems that compare two things, I'm comparing the length to the width, look for the word than, or something that means it as long as, than. And whatever follows than is always your single variable. You know, a lot of people like to use X. I use whatever makes sense. So width follows than. So on the width, which is usually the shorter side, I just put W. Then you reread the problem to see what you're going to put for length. So something using W. So this says the length is 1 inch less than 3 times this. So I need to write 1 inch less than 3 times this. And that looks like this. Again, this was a big concept in Math 090, the class before this. So 1 less than means minus 1, 3 times the width. So now we need to keep reading area. So do you all remember the formula for the area of a rectangle? Area equals length times width. So anytime I see the word area, perimeter, the first thing I do is write down the formula because I know what my next step is fill in everything I know. Do I know area? Yes, 14. Then I don't need to write the inches squared. I can write that later. Do I know the length? Yes, 3W minus 1. Do I know the width? Yes, W. So I filled in my whole equation. So now I have what's going to be a quadratic equation, and I can solve by factoring. So let's turn it around so it looks more like what we're used to. And there is one very similar to this on the test, the workout part. The word problem one is more like one on the back page, but the working out of this and solving the quadratic, very much like one on the test. So I just flipped it around so it looked more like what we're used to seeing. So W times 3W plus minus 1 in order can be flipped because this is multiplication. Equals 14. I put my constant over there. Following the rules from page 14, we learned that step 1 was to set equal to 0. Well, before we start moving stuff, we got to get rid of the parentheses. So using our exponent rules, we get 3W squared minus 1W. And then I'm just going to go ahead and do the 14 on this step 2. So minus 14 equals 0. And look what we have. We have just a regular AC problem. And that big squeaking was my irrigation. Sorry about that. I have my window open because it's so nice out. So we are looking at AC method because I see there's nothing common. So that tells me to look at the leading term. When the leading term's not 1, I have to use AC method. So 3 times 14 is 42. And remember, we don't have to worry about signs. We'll take care of the signs later. So I'm looking for factors of 42. Read the problem backwards. That's subtract a 1. So 6 and 7. That's nice, huh? And I need to get negative 1. So this says the signs are different. And this says make sure the larger number is negative. So positive 6, negative 7. When you add those, do you get negative 1? Yes. So that means we're ready to expand. And remember what I said earlier. Put the negative first, then you don't have to deal with the negative GCF. So minus 7W plus 6W minus 14. So you're taking negative 1W out, replacing it with these two, and make sure and put the same variable on it. So now we are ready to group, now that we have it in 4 terms. So here, I think the only thing common would be a W. So take a W out of each one, and we get 3W minus 7. Bring down your plus sign. And here we have what, 2 common? So take a 2 out of each, 3W minus 7. So this is when we get excited, because if these match, that's a really good indication you're doing the problem correctly. So we take out the matching binomial, which is now our GCF, and put it in front. So 3W minus 7. And in the second binomial, we write W plus 2, what's left over. And then remember, these are still set equal to 0. Don't lose the 0. Students that lose a 0 are the ones that stop here and go, oh, I'm done. Haven't even answered the question. Because they lost the 0 and they forgot it was a solving problem. They just reverted back to factoring. Well, in this section on the first page, we learned if A times B, if 2 numbers multiplied together give me 0, then either the first number is 0 or the second. That's the only way we can get 0. So either the first number is 0 or the second number is 0. Add 7, 3W equals 7. Divide by 3, W is 7/3. And since this is a word problem, it might be a better idea to do 2 1/3. 3 goes into 7 twice with 1 left over. Your calculator does that too if you can't do it in your head. And to solve the next one, we subtract 2, W equals -2. And what I tell students about quadratics is when you're solving a quadratic, there's always going to be 2 answers. But when you're doing a word problem, there's probably not going to be 2 answers, which means one of your numbers is not going to make sense. So take a minute right now and look at those 2 answers and tell me which one you think makes sense. So W is the width of a rectangle. Can the width of a rectangle be 2 1/3 inches long? I don't see why not. Can the width of a rectangle be -2 inches long? No. So like I said, most of the time with quadratics, you'll get the 2 answers and you'll see they both don't make sense. So you take out the one that doesn't make sense and you use the one that does. This says find the length and width. So we know the width is 2 1/3 inches, because that says W. So I'm going to box that as my first answer. To find the width, to find the length, you're going to put 2 1/3 in for W. So this is what we'll type into the calculator. Length equals 3 times 2 1/3 minus 1. So that's what we're going to put in the calculator. Do you guys remember when you're doing mixed numbers, you have to go 2, fraction bar, 1, fraction bar, 3. So mixed numbers require you hitting the fraction bar key twice. So we have 3 times 2 fraction bar 1 fraction bar 3. So that's how the calculator has you type in mixed numbers, because it needs to know where the 2 and 1 separate, because it needs to know the whole number, numerator, denominator. And then hit subtract 1 down here, and that says 6. So the length is 6 inches. So let's go over here and write equals length equals 6 inches. And there are my two answers. Lots of times they'll write 6 inches by 2 1/3 inches. Like if you were going to a lumber store or something like that, that's usually how they would write it. I'm not sure how Alex wants you to write it on the test, but I'm sure they'll let you know. Okay, so make sure you know how to do that with the mixed number. Okay, we have one more word problem coming up. So the product of two consecutive integers. So do you guys know what consecutive integers are? It would be like 3 and 4, and it says positive. So it's two numbers right in a row, 7 and 8. So a lot of times students go, okay, well, I know what they are, but I don't know how to write an equation about them. Well, what I say is, okay, well, we're going to call the first one x. So what can we call the second one? Well, it's one larger, so how do I write one larger than this? X plus 1. And students go, well, how did I know to pick 3 and 4? Well, guess what? If you would have picked 7 and 8, you get the same thing. Call the first number x. The second number is one larger, so it's still x plus 1. So it doesn't matter which two positive consecutive integers you pick. This is going to be the first one. So x equals first integer. And x plus 1 will always be the second, because if they're consecutive, the second one's always going to be one larger. So you can start from knowing nothing, just pick two numbers that match that, and that will help you get the algebraic representations for it. So it says the product of two consecutive integers. So product means multiply, so one number times the second. Is in math means equal. This is doing a lot of stuff back from 092. This was how we start 092, is by translating. For less than, this is another big concept in 092. For less than means you're taking 4 away from something. It doesn't mean 4 minus. It would be 4 less if it was 4 minus, but 4 less than means you're subtracting 4 from something. 4 times their sum. Sum means to add. So you're really just translating word for word. So product of two integers. So product means multiply. Sum means add. So it means the first integer times the second, and because this was two terms, I put it in parentheses. Is means equal in math. 4 less than means minus 4. 4 times their sum. I knew that was going to need parentheses because we're adding something. And their sum would be the first number plus the second number. So what do we get here? Let's see. We get x squared plus x equals 4x plus 4x plus 4 minus 4. So x squared plus x, and then this is 4x plus 4x plus 4. And I could have combined like terms first. I just knew there was going to be a bunch of like terms at the end, so I didn't bother. So 4x plus 4x plus 4 minus 4. So I can see those cancel. So I get x squared plus 1x equals 8x. Well, anytime we have a quadratic and you're asked to find something, solve something, step 1 from the very first page of this was set equal to 0. Most common mistake students make. Anytime you're solving an equation where the highest power is 2, you have to set equal to 0. So I think this is going to be our last step, and then we'll finish on the next video.